Story 1, Between Worlds and Pews, submitted by James. I've never been one to openly share my experiences, especially not on forums like this. But this memory, and every time it resurfaces, I feel this weight pressing down on my chest. So here it is, a memory from about 3 years back. I just need to get it off my chest. The church I attended was pretty old. It's not massive or grand, but it has character, with creaky wooden benches and those old glass-stained windows that would paint the insides with sunlight. Every Sunday, I'd find solace in the same pew, 4th row from the back. One particular evening, during a weekday service, the congregation was smaller than usual. The rain was pouring outside, the kind that's accompanied by rolling thunder. I remember because the flashing of lightning would momentarily light up the entire interior, giving it an eerie vibe. However, the atmosphere inside was mostly calm. At some point during the service, I heard the faintest of cries. I looked around discreetly, but it seemed no one else was bothered by it. Maybe a baby was restless, which was pretty common. And then she walked in. From the entrance of the church, a woman appeared. She looked worn out, I guess. Her clothes seemed drenched, clung tightly to her body, and she had this wild, tangled mess of hair cascading around her face. Her eyes, God, those eyes, were this unsettling mix of fatigue and desperation. Beside her was a stroller. I could see the baby from where I sat, but the cries grew louder as she slowly made her way down the aisle. They echoed eerily through the otherwise silent church. She took a seat 2 rows in front of me, and all of this while she didn't even acknowledge anyone, didn't even look up. Now I know church is a place for everyone, and honestly, every soul, no matter how lost, she should find some peace there. But something felt off. For the rest of the service, she sat still. No hymn singing, no prayers, just silence and that insistent baby's cry. Once the service concluded, I wanted to approach her, maybe offer some help or just talk. I don't know, but before I could make a move, the priest approached her. He bent down to talk to her, and for a moment they exchanged a few inaudible words. The priest's face went pale, and he took a step back, looking visibly shaken. Curiosity got the best of me. I leaned in a bit to try and get a better look at the baby, and I wish I hadn't. The stroller was empty. No baby, just a doll, old and tattered. It's missing its eyes, leaving hollow sockets. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Mrs. Lawrence, a longtime member of our church. She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. That woman comes in every few years, always during a storm, always with that doll. Father Matthew said she lost her child decades ago in a flood. My stomach knotted up. The priest eventually led the woman out, his hand reassuringly on her back. As they passed, she turned her head to look at me, and I can't forget those eyes. The next morning, I approached Father Matthew, and all he said was, "Some souls are trapped between worlds. All we can do is pray." Story 2, Echoes in the Empty Church, submitted by Anonymous. I was about 7 months pregnant at the time, and I was on my spiritual journey. My mother always said that church gave her peace during her pregnancies, so I decided to follow her footsteps. Every Sunday, I'd attend the local church, sometimes even on weekends if it felt particularly stressed. One Wednesday evening, I decided to drop by the church. I figured a quiet moment in the chapel might help ease some of the overwhelming feelings I was having as a soon-to-be mom. When I arrived, the setting sun cast this warm golden hue on the church's stained glass windows. It was beautiful, but eerily quiet. You know, like almost too quiet. I walked down the central aisle, appreciating the silence, the smell of old wood and candle wax surrounding me. I settled into one of the pews and just closed my eyes for a moment. It was one of those moments where you're not praying, just thinking, just being. It must have been about 10 minutes before I heard a soft murmur. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then it sounded like a lullaby. The tune was unfamiliar, but the voice singing it was distinctly female, and it felt heavy with sorrow. I opened my eyes and looked around. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I looked toward the altar. There in the very front pew sat a woman in a tattered long dress, cradling a baby in her arms. Her face was shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, and the baby was wrapped in an old-looking blanket. There was this feeling in the air, thick and almost tangible, like walking into a room after two people have just argued. Okay, naturally my first instinct was to ask if she was okay. Maybe she was just another churchgoer seeking solace, or she was in some kind of trouble. I called out, "Hello, are you all right?" But she didn't respond. She continued humming that lullaby. My instincts as a soon-to-be mom kicked in, and I felt this weird connection, thinking she might be a struggling mother. So I got up and started to walk towards her. That's when things got weird. As I approached her, the temperature of the room around me dropped. It felt like I had just walked into a freezer. I slowed down, every step feeling heavier. When I was about 2 rows behind her, the baby started to cry. Not just any cry, but this heart-wrenching wail. And yet the woman's humming remained steady, and even never changing in volume or pitch. I was frozen on the spot. This wasn't right. Something about that woman, that baby, just didn't add up. The crying got louder, filling every corner of the church. I wanted to help, but I just couldn't move. Then, as suddenly as it started, the crying stopped. The church returned to its all-encompassing silence, and when I mustered the strength to look up, the woman and the baby were gone, vanished, as if they were never there. I practically sprinted out of the church, the cold air outside doing nothing to calm my racing thoughts. Father Mitchell told me about a woman who once sought refuge in the church with her child many decades ago. She faced unspeakable hardships, and the church was her last sanctuary. Story 3, The Unseen Faces of St. Michael, submitted by Laura. Look, I've been attending St. Michael's for as long as I can remember. My parents are devout, so every Sunday, without fail, we'd walk down that cobble pathway leading to the large ornate doors of the church. The smell of incense, the echoing hymns, it was just another part of life for me. But there was this one memory, one experience I had in that place that's been seared into my mind. I remember it was a sunny day, birds were chirping, flowers in full bloom, the whole shebang. And yet, the inside of the church was surprisingly dark. Sunlight usually poured in through the stained glass windows, casting a mosaic of colors onto the pews. But that day, it seemed different, dimmer, like a room that had lost its lights. I was a bit early, and the church was pretty empty, save for a few early arrivals as usual. I made my way to my favorite spot, the last row, furthest from the altar. I liked sitting there because it gave me a view of the entire church, and I could watch everyone without being watched myself. So there I was, minding my own business, watching a couple of kids play catch with a crumpled paper ball. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Father Patrick and Sister Agnes, the head nun of our parish, walking from one of the side rooms. They were deep in conversation, their voices too low for me to pick up on. Now here's where things get weird. As I was watching them, their features began to, distort. It wasn't like a hallucination or a dream. It felt as real as you and me. Father Patrick's usually kind, bearded face started to elongate, with his eyes sinking deep into their sockets, while Sister Agnes's lips twisted into a sinister, exaggerated smirk. Her eyes, instead of their usual compassionate gleam, turned completely black, like ink had been poured into them. Terrified would be an understatement. I felt like I was frozen to the spot. I remember trying to call out or make some noise, anything to draw attention to what I was seeing, but I couldn't. And as they walked by me, Sister Agnes's turned her head slowly to meet my gaze, that freaky smirk still plastered on her face. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then, as quickly as it began, it ended. Father Patrick and Sister Agnes were back to their normal selves, chatting away. I, on the other hand, was left in a state of shock. When the service ended, I made my way to my parents and told them everything. I expected concern, maybe even a bit of understanding, but what I got was disbelief. My mom told me I'd probably been daydreaming, or that my mind was playing tricks on me because I hadn't had breakfast. My dad said something about the human mind being impressionable, but neither believed what I had seen. I tried telling a few of my friends as well, but most just laughed it off. One of them even said that maybe I had watched too many horror movies at night before bed. Since that day, I've never looked at Father Patrick or Sister Agnes the same way. They haven't shown any signs of being different, and nobody else seems to have seen what I did. Maybe I was just imagining it, but every time I walk into St. Michael's now, I can't help but feel a little on edge.